טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם. הנה מה טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. Shabbat Shalom.
And with that beautiful music in our ears and in the spirit of Family Day weekend, it is so lovely that Hine Matov, it is so beautiful, Shevet Achim Gam Yachad, that we are all here together for our Kabbalat Shabbat service, whether you are joining us in this beautiful Mishkan, and I hope that you are, or online, and wherever you are, I hope you just heard that beautiful two-part rousing chorus of Hine Matov. If you are looking for a Siddur, the link should be just a click away, or even under your seats if you're here in the room. We begin with Yedid Nefesh, one of our Psalms for Shabbat, on page 105.
ידיד נפש אף הרחמן בשוכבתה אל רצונה ירוץ עבדה כמו אייל ישתחווה מול הדרה כי ירח לו ידידותך מנופת ובכל טעם נפשי חולות אהבתך עניה לה רפנה לה בחרות לה נועם זיווך אז תתעסק ותתרפא והייתה של שפחת עולם די 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 די
We welcome each other and we welcome the Shabbat with the glow of the Shabbat candles. Lighting on behalf of our congregation this evening is Andrew Cohen. And for those of you who also wish to join in, maybe it is your first time at Holy Blossom or first time here in too long, maybe you are thinking of someone this evening or simply wish to fulfill the mitzvah, these beautiful trays of candles are to the left of me. Please come on up. And as you do, if you aren't coming up, take a moment to turn to the person next to you and say Shabbat Shalom. The blessings are on page 106 if you are following.
Yep. And this is our one, right? No. You say it now. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher Kitshanu b'mitzvotov v'tzivanu l'chag l'ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, l'Adonai. Naria, naria, litzur yishenu, v'kadma fana b'toda. Naria, naria, litzur yishenu, bizmiru naria lo. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, l'Adonai. Ki el gadol Adonai, u'melech gadol al kol Elohim, asher b'yado mecharei haaretz, v'toafot harim lo. Shiru l'Adonai, shiru shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai, shiru shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai, baruchu shemo, basru miyom liyom Yeshuato. Shiru l'Adonai, baruchu shemo, basru miyom liyom Yeshuato. Shiru l'Adonai, shiru shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai, shiru shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai, baruchu shemo. Shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai, baruchu shemo. Basru miyom liyom Yeshuato.
We are on page 111, Zamru l'Adonai, in the middle of the page.
Zamru l'Adonai v'chinor, v'chinor v'kol zimra, v'chatzotzot v'kol shofar. Hariu lifnei hamelech Adonai, Yom hayom u'mlo, tevel v'yoshveva, neharot yimchauchat, yachad harim yiraneinu, lifnei Adonai kiva, lishpot haaretz, yishpot tevel b'tzedek, ve'amim b'mei yesharim. Yom hayom u'mlo, tevel v'yoshveva, neharot yimchauchat, yachad harim yiraneinu.
We greet the presence of Shabbat with Lecha Dodi on page 115.
Lechadoti likrat kala, p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lechadoti likrat kala, p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, tishmiyanu el hamiuchad. Adonai echad, ושמו אחד, לשם תפארת וליתי לה לך דודי לי כלכלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לי כלכלה פני שבת נקבלה לקראת שבת לכו במלאכה כי היא מקור הברכה מראש מקדם ניסוחה סוף מעשה במחשבה תפילה לך דודי לי כלכלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לי כלכלה פני שבת נקבלה התעוררי התעוררי כי באורך קומי אורי 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 שיר דברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נקבע לך דודי לי כלכלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לי כלכלה פני שבת נקבלה בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ובצוחלה תוך אמוני עם סגולה בואי חלה בואי חלה לך דודי לי כלכלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לי כלכלה פני שבת נקבלה לי 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 שבת נקבלה לך דודי לי כלכלה פני שבת נקבלה מזמור שיר ליום השבת טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון ולזמר לשמך עליון מזמור שיר ליום השבת טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון ולזמר לשמך עליון להגיד בבוקר חסדיך ואמונתך בלילות עלי אסור ועלי גבל עלי היגיון בחינוך מזמור שיר ליום השבת טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון ולזמר לשמך עליון כי שימחתני אדוני בפועלך במעשה ידיך ארנן מה גדלו מעשיך אדוני מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך מזמור שיר ליום השבת טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון ולזמר לשמך
on page 119 for the Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach HaMevorach Leolam Vaed HaMevorach HaMevorach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, v'chokhma poteach she'arim, uvitvuna mishane itim, umachalif
et hazmanim, umesoder et hachochavim b'mishmeretehem barakia kirtzono. Vayom v'layla.
golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, uma'avir yom umevi laila, umavdil ben yom uven laila, Adonai tzvaot shemo, El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim.
Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta, Otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shachfeinu, v'kumenu nasiach b'chukecha, v'nizmach b'divrei toratecha, v'mitzvotecha leolam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu, ve'orech yameinu, uvahem nege yomam v'layla, nege yomam v'layla, v'ahavatcha al tasir mimenu leolamim. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivon Malchuto Leolam Vaed. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha uv'chol me'odecha v'chayu hadavarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'aderech uv'shochbecha uv'gumecha ushartam leot ayadecha v'hayu letotafot beinenecha uchtzavtam amazuzot beitecha uvisharecha למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Adonai Elohechem Emet. We're on page 124. All this we hold to be true and sure. You alone are our God. There is none else, and we are Israel, your people. You are our sovereign. You deliver us from the hands of oppressors and save us from the fists of tyrants. You do wonders without number, marvels that surpass our understanding. You give us our life. By your help, we survive all who seek our destruction. You did wonders for us in the land of Egypt, miracles and marvels in the land of Pharaoh. You led your people Israel out, forever to serve you in freedom. When your children witnessed your power, they extolled you and gave you thanks. Willingly they enthroned you, and full of joy, Moses, Miriam, and Israel sang this song.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha neder b'kodesh, norat tehilot osefele, norat tehilot osefele. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha neder b'kodesh, norat tehilot osefele, norat tehilot osefele. מלכותך ובניך בוקע לפני משה זה אלינו ויאמרו זה אלינו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדרני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גא ישראל.
Page 126 together. Grant that we may lie down in peace, Adonai our God, and raise us up, O Sovereign, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel, and for your name's sake be our help. Shield us from hatred and plague. Keep us from war and famine and anguish. Subdue our inclination to evil. O God, our guardian and helper, our gracious and merciful Sovereign, give us refuge in the shadow of your wings. Guard our coming and our going, that now and always we may have life and peace. Praised are you, Adonai, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem.
ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני, הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו, ועל כל עמו ישראל, ועל ירושלים. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם, ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי Shabbat, Shabbat vayinafash. Shabbat, Shabbat vayinafash. Yikadol v'yitkadash shemei Rabbai. Be'alamadi v'rach yirutei v'amlich malchutei. B'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayechon beit Yisrael. Ba'agala, ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'meru. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach Le'alam u'la'alamei almaya Yitbarach, Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ard v'yidromam v'yitnaseh V'yitadar v'yitaleh V'yitalal Shemei Dekudesha Brichu Le'ela min kol berchata V'shirata Tush bechata v'nechem bata dami hiran bi'alma b'meru. Amen. Adonai Sifetai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach Umagen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ufokei Tzara, Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mechaye Meitim Atah, Rav Lehoshia, Mashiv HaRuach, Umarit HaGashem, Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed, Mechaye Meitim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Micha Mocha Bal Gevurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit, Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah l'chachayot meitim, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hametim. Atah kadosh v'shemcha kadosh, ukadoshim b'chol yom yichalelu chasela. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
We take a few moments either for the words of our tradition on the page or the words of our own hearts.
Oseh Shalom Ibrahma. Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel Ve'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom Ibrahma. Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel Ve'imru Oseh Shalom Ibrahma. Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel Ve'imru Amen.
And so, with that joyful tune, but also the words that it teaches us of peace and of understanding, we reflect on our Torah portion this week, which is called Mishpatim, which quite literally means laws. But when we look at this portion, we can understand that it is truly a set of shared understandings. And in being blessed to be hosted on this land, we acknowledge the shared understandings that we work towards with our Indigenous brothers and sisters as we work towards truth and reconciliation. We also turn inward to our own community as we acknowledge the healing of the mind and healing of the spirit, the healing of the body that we wish for those members of our community as follows. Johanna Folk, Chana bat Gittel, Joel Sears, Gittel Yaakova bat Sarah v'Shmuel, Moshe Gershon ben Ruchel Leah v'Borach Shalom Chaim, Eliyahu ben Rachel v'Chaim Yitzchak, Sarah bat Devorah, Chana Gittel bat Geula u'Moshe, Elisheva bat Sarah Gila v'Nachman, Moshe ben Elka v'Yitzchak David, Ethan Bereskin, Chana bat Elvira, Robert Collin, Daniel ben Reisa v'Baruch, and Linda Pasternak. If there is anyone else you wish to add to our prayers for healing this evening, please feel free to do so. Page 137.
Mi sheberach imotenu bekor habracha avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Misheberach avotenu bekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Last Shabbat morning, during the congregational kiddush, as I greeted a dear congregant and sat down to eat lunch, they immediately said something to me along the lines of, "Our prayer for leadership this morning in the Mishkan was ironic, considering the mayor." Now I, having been upstairs in the youth chapel for the family service, and admittedly having lived under a Shabbat-induced rock since the previous evening, had not yet heard the news of Mayor John Tory's affair with a younger, former staffer, and his subsequent intention to step down from his prominent public role. In the week since, there have, of course, been many articles written on the subject, about how the mayor called his affair a serious error in judgment, his expressions of regret, the calls from his allies to stay on, his legacy projects, the sordid events leading up to his announcement, and so on. However, it was an article from the CBC that highlighted to me the crux of the dilemma, that of power dynamics between, in this case, a boss and their employees. In said article, Farah Khan, CEO of Possibility Seeds, a consulting company on gender equity, poses the question: how do you freely give consent when someone is your boss, has the power to fire you, to get you raises, to ensure you can move up, that you can connect with people? It is these questions about the relationship between a leader and their people which lie at the heart of our parasha this week, Mishpatim. Coming right on the heels of the revelation of the Ten Commandments in Parashat Yitro last week, with its striking imagery of God hovering over a smoking Mount Sinai in a thick cloud of thunder and lightning and the sound of blaring horns, this portion presents almost the opposite. No dramatic scene, just a litany of seemingly disjointed rules, ranging from the treatment of slaves to ownership of livestock to the imperative to care for the stranger. Put differently, it seems that we turn from laws ben adam lamakom, between a person and their God, to those that are between ben adam lachavero, between a person and their friend or their fellow. It is in that spirit that I wish to lift up a few examples from our parasha, which may illuminate what left us feeling these ripples of shock surrounding Mayor Tory's recent revelations and resignation. The first comes from the start of our portion, detailing how when a Hebrew slave is acquired, they serve for 6 years, and on the 7th they go free. Furthermore, if the slave arrives single, they'll leave single. If they arrived with a wife, the wife leaves with him. If the master granted the slave a wife during the time of their indenture, then the wife, as well as any children born during that time that the slave was in the master's house, well, then that woman and the children belong to the master. Thus, at the end of the 7 years, if the slave declares, Ahavti et Adoni, ve'et ishti ve'et banai, ve'lo etzei chofshi, I love my master and my wife and children, I shall not go free. Then the master brings the slave to the doorpost and pierces his ear with an awl. And it's reminiscent of that scene from the movie The Parent Trap, where they pierce one of the twins' ears with a needle. Yikes. And through this act, the slave belongs to the master for life. We could interpret this law as compassionate. How wonderfully that master must have treated their slave that the slave wants to stay. And how kind that the master is willing to continue providing this slave and his family a home in which to live. And this could be true. We could equally pay attention to the other side of the coin. The slave is dependent on the master for sustenance, financially and physically. Perhaps he is older now and will not find another house to serve. And then, even if he does, perhaps he's afraid of what belonging to a new master might mean. Will they treat him well? Will he be tasked with impossible labor? Will he have enough to eat? Will he have a warm place to sleep? Will he have to move to a foreign land? This is all, by the way, without even thinking about the implications of if the slave has a family to care for, a family who it is unlikely they would wish to leave behind. With all this uncertainty and unknown, we can reflect again on that notion of consent. The master, in control of the slave's livelihood, undoubtedly has the upper hand, whether they're benevolent or not, and whether the slave realizes it implicitly or explicitly. To paraphrase Ms. Khan from our CBC article, whether there is a special relationship or not, there is always a power differential, which brings with it a level of responsibility. On that note, later in the parasha, we read, Elohim lo tekalel v'nasi v'amcha lo ta'or. You shall not curse God, nor revile a leader among you. This may feel like a contradiction, for we have now spent several chapters being integrated into a particular power system, which governs our relationships with one another and the way that we live our lives as individuals and communities, that idea of ben adam lachavero that we mentioned earlier. In this singular verse, though, it seems that we are then asked not to reflect on it too much, and potentially hear underneath it that ancient belief of the power of a sovereign being equivalent with the power of a god, or being God-given. Nonetheless, we can just as well read it as an invitation to observe power with a critical but fair eye. Sforno, the 16th century Italian physician and rabbi, teaches that this phrase is in relation to legitimate authority, and he would have been thinking about a king whose reign lasts a lifetime, with the modern spin for us being that those who are elected into office are typically only elected for a certain period of time and can be replaced in a democracy by the will of the people. Yet, the ruler is a reflection of their people, we learn. Chizkuni from the 13th century points out that it is usually wealthy people who rose to such positions, which would certainly have been the case in his day, and therefore the ones who can extend loans to the needy. As we read in our Torah immediately preceding that command not to curse, Ki yitz'ak elai v'sham'ati ki chanun ani. For when they cry out to me, I shall listen, for I am compassionate. In other words, the one in power is held to a moral standard, to act in the service of those to whom they are responsible, and particularly the vulnerable, by not taking advantage of their privileged position and by being responsive to them in times of need. Which brings us to why, no matter what you think of him, the current controversy surrounding the now previous Mayor John Tory, his resignation took effect at 5 p.m. today, I understand. I would posit that it's because we rely on those in power, whoever they are, to be models of moral behavior, whether that standard is set by our Torah, our tradition, our society, or the positions we're elected to, because they set the tone for the people and communities that they lead. Thus, when they behave in a way that violates those standards, knowingly or not, consensually or not, they also violate the legitimacy of the power they claim to hold. Although originally a mark of devotion to the diaspora lands in which we dwell as Jews, at a time when acceptance was virtually impossible, it is perhaps for this reason that we recite the very prayer, the one deemed ironic from earlier, for our leaders each Shabbat morning. We pray for all who serve in positions of leadership and responsibility in our national life. Protect them as they aid and defend your creation. Inspire them to be responsive to your will, so that Canada may be to the world an example of justice and compassion. It is those last two values that I wish to highlight tonight. That again, regardless of how we feel about any of these said leaders, regardless of which side of the political spectrum we sit,
It is the principles of justice and compassion, that responsibility those values bring to God's will and to our national life, that we hold up as sacred and hope and expect to see manifested in our own time. Subsequently, going into this Shabbat, we can then look to the welfare of our community, of our city of Toronto, that might deserve our focus when we read the next prayer. May the one who blessed our ancestors bless this sacred congregation, all who serve it and those who contribute to its future. May all who seek your presence find it here. Returning to our initial irony, it is ironic that we find ourselves on the cusp of the Hebrew month of Adar, in which we celebrate Purim by reading the Megillat Esther, which famously has no mention of God's presence at all. It is a time of joviality. After all, Misha Nichnas Adar Marbin Besimcha, those who welcome Adar multiply in joy. And something that I heard consistently this past week was that there were many who felt there was a joke to be found among this situation, of which there are many, no question. Yet my hope for us this Shabbat is, as another dear congregant wrote just yesterday in anticipation of Rosh Chodesh, that we see the relationship of Adar to the Hebrew word Adir, which denotes strength or power. May we face this next week and this next month with its characteristic humor, but take with it lessons of strength and powerful leadership to set the compassionate example and to see justice manifest in our good city, whatever that might look like. Ken Yehi Ratzon, Shabbat Shalom. We turn to page 139 and rise for the Aleinu.
Aleini l'shabech l'adon hakol, l'tekiru l'yotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoy haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot adama, shelo asam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu Noteh Shamayim v'Yoser Haaretz, U'Moshav Yekaro b'Shamayim Imal, Shechinatu Zo, U'Shechinatu Zo, Begavhei Meromim, Hu Eloheinu Ein Od, Emet Malkeinu Nefetz Zulato, Kakatu v'Torato, Biadata hayom v'ashevota el levavecha, ki Adonai hu Elohim b'shamayim imal, ve'al haaretz mitachat ein od, v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz. Bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad.
Our hearts and minds now turn to the sacred memories of those who we have loved and lost, and we ask the mourners among us to rise this evening that we may acknowledge and be with you. Today, we mark the yahrzeit of the following: Bella Albright, Dorothy Ayton, Samuel Batcher, Tilly Baker, Livia Bartow, William Byrne, Ruth Brown, Henry Castle, Ruth Feinberg, William Feldstein, Samuel Florence, Joseph Florence, Johanna Frankel, Lena Frankel, Hilda Gillis, Etta Ginsberg McEwen, Max Glazer, Jean Greenstein, Harry Grossman, Rose Harris, Margaret Hart, Harry Herscherin, David Kettner, Joy Lasky, Florence Liederman, Zelig Leibovici, Max Levine, Emma Lieben, Rudolph Lieben, Bertha Liss, William Lobel, Anne Locash, Anne Lowenthal, Harry Mandel, Harold Minden, Faye Mintz, Aaron Pioca, Philip Plastow, Rose Pulver, Louis Quiroz, Louis Rapp, Ethel Resnick, Alan Rossman, Teresa Sapira, Minnie Shapiro, Dorothy Schechter, William Scheuchert, Louis Shaw, Samuel Smith, Sarah Smith, Melvin Soren, Samuel Stanway, Vladimir Steinberg, George Steinhaus, Sam Strauch, Owen Taub, Harris Toker, Avram Waldman, Eugene Warschauer, Joseph Warsh, Peter Weiss, Charlotte Wilson, Jonathan Wolfe, and Herbert Wolfson. We think now, too, of those who have died most recently and whose families are in the period of Shloshim. Rabbi Bernard Baskin, Rhoda Gilbert, Anna Gurvich, Grigory Kanovich, Marion Kasdan, Dr. Joseph Leventhal, Robert Moskowitz, Lee Shapiro, Ben Steinberg, Paul Stott, Frida Taube, Sandra Trehub Matthews, and Leland Werner. We mourn too for the 3 victims killed in a car ramming attack in northern Jerusalem, Yaakov Yisrael Paley, Asher Menachem Paley, and Alter Shlomo Liederman. Are there any names to be repronounced or added to our memorial prayer this Shabbat? Zichronam Livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. We rise as one community on page 142 for the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechono v'yomeichon, u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'le'almei amaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yinaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shmei d'kodashah le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael b'imru. Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. V'nomar, together we say.
Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Kiddush can be found on page 439. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit. Ki hu yom techila l'mikra'e kodesh, zecher letziat mimitzrayim. Ki vanu v'harta v'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha b'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat.
Beautiful challah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech מוציא לחם מן הארץ. Shabbat shalom. 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 Thank you to our wonderful musicians. Thank you.